My aim is on point.
With practice, you'll be this dope one day. So until then, looking for recognition. Death is my definition. And I'll be damned if I'm not MCing.
I don't mean to make you worry, it's just I'm not giving in. I'm yet tough for me to walk away from writing crazy kid who always used to ask you for the definition of a word, how to use it in a sentence if it fit into my verse. You must have thought I'd grow out of this, I understand. It's not the safest bet I'll live to see. I'm worth a million fans, baggy pants with my hat crooked, looking for the stage. The same black hooded sweatshirt I wore for days. But play me when you start your day and get to feel what it's like to be the parents of an MC who's doing it right. And just believe in me, I'm gonna do whatever it takes. Sleep well, they're the ones who need to worry they're safe. Rest your head, soon we'll be together in each other's arms, and we'll celebrate for all the time we lost and been apart. I've hit a lot of bumps in the road, that's for sure. Tell the rest of the family I'm at it even more. I'm the song chaser to grab as many as I can.
Ladies, gentlemen, squirrels, and everyone else tuned in, welcome to another, I believe the third Spiral Arrow podcast episode, and this will be for April 2018. I've been off for a bit. In March, I had actually thought of this topic by then, but sadly, a lot of things came up. Life tends to kick you while you're down, and laziness as well. You procrastinate for quite some time, and finally I'm back. This is the third episode of the Spiral Arrow podcast, working title, sadly I have the flu. So I guess you could say this is my flu voice, but hopefully you'll be able to understand some of the things that I'll be talking about today. But I won't be bringing in a lot of answers today. Today isn't really about answering people's questions or giving solutions to people's problems before we try to do that, but today I would like people to help me. I've got a topic that relates. Fair and Fine, I had said that this is a podcast that will tackle lots of international things, lots of worldly problems, but then we'll also take a few moments within that to take a glimpse, look at it at the perspective of a prospective gamer. It's all fair and fine. People may look at certain things and be like, that's an isolated event, that has nothing to do with me. But as you may know, this is a gaming channel on YouTube, not strictly only for gaming, but I do love my video games. So in this particular case, if something were to happen, though it be political, though it be economic, it could affect me as a gamer in the long run nonetheless, because I will still want to play those games. I will still want to build that rig to play the games on. And if something hinders me to do that, then it has already affected me. Before in the past, we talked about how it was like to get into the fighting game community as a beginner in the gaming scene, in the FGC, fighting game community. That's what people call it these days. But in the second episode, we're talking about how internet affects us Africans as a whole, and we took Zimbabwe as a case study, as I'm currently in Zimbabwe. Internet's an issue, and it's actually caused to political, or should I say geopolitical problems. And a gamer may say, I'm not a politician and I'm not really interested in the laying down of fiber across the world, but that in itself, those two problems put together, have impacted gaming negatively in Zimbabwe and probably Africa as a whole. So you have to look at everything from that perspective of, yes, fair and fine, it doesn't directly hurt you right here and right now, but trust me, one way or another, it will lay a dent in whatever agenda you have, whatever works you are trying to achieve in your life. We are all connected one way or another. But I think that's enough for the introduction. That's enough of a ramble. Today, luckily enough, I'm going to have a little... This was done in post. The extra little snippet that will be included in this was done by a friend of mine. I have a fellow Tekken player by the name of, or should I say by the alias of King. You may have seen him in previous Tekken tournaments, the problem of a player. But he also wanted to chime in on this particular topic of today. The title has two parts. I would want to stage it like this. The title of today's podcast is, or should I say of this month's podcast, is Africa really, I'd like to repeat that, is Africa really considered in the world market? And another way I could stage that same question is, why are there so many international companies, franchises, and world events that Africa is not a part of? So when you look at that, that's what brought the question to me. I remember all those weeks ago, almost 2 months by now. Is Africa really considered in the world economy? Is Africa really considered in the world market? You tend to ask yourself, when products are made and the sales team and the sales department is looking at their figures, do they actually really care how many units were moved in Africa, or is only the cost of shipping and the purchases in the Western world or even the Eastern world the only ones that are really considered? Those are technically the developed countries. Africa is kind of just stuck in the mud. If you look at the history of it all, the world has come, they've pillaged, they've plundered, they've colonized, and they've stolen a lot from Africa, resource-wise and otherwise. And now that they have everything they wanted from the continent, they've left and they're doing their own things. Now they're profiting off the struggle that they put on the African people all these centuries of slavery. Now, us as Africa, we have managed to pick ourselves up, though there may still be 1,000,001 problems. But even though we are still dependent upon the world, no one man's island, I believe is what they say. I don't know, it's it's a sticky or a tricky situation if you look at it, because now we have to work for ourselves to bring ourselves up, because the world won't help us, and it's kind of tough to do so because you will need the world's resources to pick yourselves up, and you'll need some advice, you'll need some investors, you will need so many different things that will affect everyone in Africa, including us gamers. So before we even get into the topics at hand, it's actually one big article that I decided to write up. Help myself memorize some of the things that I really wanted to talk to you about. And I would like to thank King before his segment even comes in, because he put in his 2 cents. Without him, I don't think this podcast would have been possible, because it was something we were talking about one day. And we actually are like, has anyone really posed this question to the world? Are people answering this? Because we need an answer. As gamers, we're now frustrated trying to build up a gaming community in a continent where there just isn't enough infrastructure for a gaming community to strive, to grow, to flourish. It's just not there. So here are the questions as they stand, and maybe if you are willing, please write down in the comment section below in this podcast video and tell me what you think. Maybe you have the answers I've been looking for. Maybe you are willing to help out in the situation, because Africa needs everything, all the help they can get, all the advice they can get to stand up as all these different countries, to unite as one Africa and probably move on to great things. My first question is, there are no international companies, or should I say there are very few international companies and very few world events based in Africa. I'll reiterate that, or should I say I'll repeat it and try to explain it. There are very few international companies / world events based in Africa, or Africa is a part of. This question I believe is very straightforward. If you look at all these big companies, car manufacturers, iron and steel industries, if you look at these world franchises, whether they be fast food franchises like your typical KFC, Burger Kings, the famous American ones, I guess, your Starbucks, all those things. I may not know a lot of them because I personally don't keep up that much with world news. No more about the here and the now. But if you look at all these big franchises, if you look at all these big companies, Sony's, Dell, Microsoft, HP, all these technology companies, Sony. If you look at all of those and then you look at the current state of what's happening in Africa, there is a community, there's a market. People are looking for products. People are looking to work for franchises or to potentially partner up with these franchises to open branches in Africa. Where are they? And the ones that are there, why are you so few? We'll get into more detail in that in a bit. And why are there so many world events? This is actually where King, I'll have a segment specifically for him where he asked this one question. In the gaming community, you hear that there's this Capcom Pro Tour for Street Fighter, right? There's this Tekken World Tour where there are all these world ranking events in all these different continents. Yet there's not even a single event hosted in a single place in Africa. Just one event. There are literally close to 100, if not more, events online and offline based in so many different countries across the world because they're calling it the World Tour. But there's not even one ranking event in Africa. I don't understand how you can call it a World Tour. Are you trying to say that Africa as a continent, all those countries are not part of the world? Are you trying to say that there are no gamers in Africa? Are you trying to say that there's no market? Is there no community in Africa? What exactly are you trying to say? Come across with an answer. Someone please help us. Someone please help us. The second question was, why is it that they aren't... How can I... My goodness, this is... I don't know. All these companies, I was talking about companies and franchises. Yes. Fair and fine, there may be very few that actually have branches here. There may be very few that have a presence here. These are the international companies that were, should I say, founded in other places. Sony in Japan, HP and Dell in America, wherever they're from. Even if we're looking at fast food, Burger King, Caesar's Pizza, whatever, right? All these were founded within their countries. So all fair and fine, they have to protect their own interests at the end of the day. So now my second question is, why aren't there any international companies that have been founded in Africa? This is a question to the African governments and the African people. Are we so far behind? Are we so inferior as a people? Because I don't believe we are. That we can't create our own brand, our own franchise, or our own companies and spread our influence across the world. Why do we have to rely on other people to bring their business to us? Why can't we take our business to them? That's the crux of the matter, because at the end of the day, if people don't want to help you, you have to help yourself. In the end, that's what I believe, and in all honesty, I don't think it will change until we change it, and until we change ourselves. And our last question was the very first question I posed. Is Africa actually considered in the global economy? We see all these video game sales. I saw some stats quite a bit ago. I was asking around, trying to get some resources about this little discussion, these questions I wanted to pose to people. A friend of mine plays FIFA. He really, really loves sports games. He really loves football. And he's been playing FIFA 18, and I was just asking him about these questions, and he was saying that personally he believes that Africa as a continent is definitely not considered in the world economy. People, when it comes down to sales, you hear companies complaining about how they didn't meet their sales quotas. At the end of the day, he believes that if you were to go into those meetings, go into those boardroom meetings with the marketing team, with the sales department team, with all the creditors and debtors, they will tell you that, in all honesty, when products are shipped and moved, if any sales are incurred in Africa, it's a bonus. He believes, from what he's seen in the company he works in, they have their target markets in the East and in the West. But when it comes down to did we actually sell any product in Africa, that's just a bonus. It doesn't matter if the product never made it that far. It doesn't really matter. Of course, there are some companies that will be based here where things like that will matter. You'll have companies like Microsoft who actually have headquarters in Africa. You'll have car manufacturers like BMW, Mercedes, Porsche. You have different companies like Ford who have construction sites, who have industries in different ports around Africa, around, for example, South Africa and Egypt, because I guess access to the sea. Those companies will actually care about where the product was moved in Africa, because some of the product is being manufactured in Africa, but not really that much. So those are the questions I've posed to people. And I'm sure someone out there is wondering then, if things are so bad in Africa, I've heard so much about how Africa is this new emerging economy, maybe there's some hope. Surely it can't be all bad. Fair and fine, before I go into what I feel hurts me as a gamer and what hurts the communities all around Africa, I will come up with the argument for Africa, I guess, saying that yes, it is, technically speaking, it is an emerging market, because with the way things are going in the world, with the investments of telecommunications, it definitely has to be. I've written down quite a few notes here in regards to why I think this is true. First of all, if you're to look at all the governments currently right now, scrap the crime and the corruption aside, that's there definitely, and I believe corruption and crime isn't a black problem. It's a world problem. It's just that sometimes corruption in other countries isn't publicly shown, or should I say ridiculed by the public, because of trying to maintain self-interest, or should I say protecting the country's interests. They are corrupt politicians, no matter where you are. That is a fact. There's no one country I can name where I can say there is no corruption, there is no crime in that country. I believe that's a falsehood you definitely shouldn't believe. So if we're to push that aside, you look at some of the businessmen, you look at some of the politicians, you look at some of the analysts and the people talking on the forums, there's this sense of financial self-sustainability that people are pushing towards the public, where they're saying no matter how tough things are, no matter how shitty it really gets, you have to be, as a person, as a community, as a country, you have to be able to self-sustain yourselves as a country, financially or otherwise. It doesn't have to be just finance. You have to do the job yourself instead of asking for aid, instead of crying to the UN or crying to the US or crying to whoever, crying to China, all these world powers for help. They may choose to help because it makes them look good. But outside of that, you have to be self-sustaining, financially or otherwise. People are, should I say, preaching this gospel, trying to get self-awareness to the people, whether it be people in marketplaces, people in businesses, from the lower end of the spectrum all the way to the CEOs, and I believe this is a good thing. If you get people starting up their own companies in situations like Zimbabwe, where unemployment is extremely high, 90% or more, if you get people making their own jobs, you get people surviving in economies that otherwise you wouldn't be able to survive in the first place. Those are the people who start creating opportunity for themselves and hopefully opportunity for the others around them. Just because things are bad in Zimbabwe doesn't stop me and my friends from trying to run tournaments or build arcades. You see what I mean? At the end of the day, things are tough. The economy is dying, or it's completely dead. It depends on which side of the spectrum you look at it from. But as gamers, we are still trying. We're still trying to find ways to improve upon the gaming infrastructures that are currently present within the country. That is the whole point. The world already took from Africa. I already said this. You can't cry about spilled milk They are enjoying their profits. It's just the way it is. So now as Africans, we just have to stand up, improve ourselves, and even though things are the way they are, you just have to make life what it is for yourselves. Find opportunity, find profit, find creativity in areas where people would think there isn't any. And I believe that right there creates a strong self, a strong people. But if you're to look at it on the ground, what analysts are saying, I was just trying to read around and see what people are actually saying when it comes to growth in Africa. Technically, it's slow. It's slow. If you had to look at what's been happening in the Latin Americas, Hispanic Americas there, if you had to look at what's been happening in Asia, growth in those two segments of the world has been moving at an extremely fast rate, exponentially. Fair and fine, it's select places, but even if you were to look at those select places, let's just take some examples. Let's look at Brazil. Let's look at areas like Mexico. Let's look at areas like China, South Korea, Singapore, Japan. Those countries have stated, for example, if you look at from the end of World War II up into the 1950s till now, the amount of change that has happened in these 60 plus, or should I say 70 years of development, it's two different places. Look at China in 1980 and look at China now in 2018. You would believe that you are living in two different worlds. The people managed to work amongst themselves. Select chairmen who would move the agenda and protect their own interests above all else. You may lie, cheat, or steal from other people, as Eddie Guerrero would say. But in the end, look at China now. They were criticized for their methods. They were criticized for what they were doing. Oh, they're polluting this. Oh, they're destroying the economies that. Oh, they're cheating these people X, Y, and Z. But if you look at the final product of what they're doing now, they may not be a perfect country, but they've made a crap ton of progress. So fair and fine in Africa, the speed isn't that quick. Probably due to multiple factors. Corruption, we have leaders taking money that belongs to the country, instead of using it for development, they use it for their self-gain. We have situations whereby the world imposes sanctions on Africa, a already struggling state of affairs in different countries, yet more sanctions are being put because the world wants Africa to conform to what they want Africa to do, not what Africans want to do. So in the end, there are just so many issues that we bring amongst ourselves and issues that the world puts on us that has stifled our growth. I won't lie and say that colonization that only so recently ended, it also played a part. Fair and fine countries are trying to move on, but there are still ties when it comes to land, businesses, ownership of properties that is still deeply rooted into the colonial times. We have to make these things right. We have to fix issues. We have to still fix problems. Most of these developing countries or developed, these emerging economies long got over the hump of colonization. China's been free for a long time. Vietnam's been free for a long time. South Korea, Singapore, Brazil, Argentina, Chile, Peru. If you look at those places, they've been free for a relatively long time. Fair and fine, they may still have been struggle. But at least development started at an earlier stage than most of these African countries that are still struggling till this day. I'm not trying to protect Africa, but as an African, I would like to stand up for the people and say, some of our problems were never our own. The world brought them here, and we now just have to babysit them and try fix them. Most of the analysts are saying that what's been noted is a lack of advanced tech infrastructure. The economies are prone to crime and corruption, and therefore the continent is considered to be a more quote-unquote risky investment compared to those Asian markets I was talking about, all of which is true. If we're now looking at it from the perspective of foreign investors who want to come into Africa and watch it blossom, it's a big risk. So much crime, so much corruption, so many political problems and issues that are stopping them. And those who are willing to do it's a big risk, and if it doesn't pay off, chances are those investors don't really ever return for another investment. They might move on to those Asian markets because it seems like business is blooming there. And if you're to look at it just that one note, it would kind of answer some of the questions you would see. There's so many, as gamers, for example, people want consoles, people want video games, people want peripherals, people want computer parts. But what's giving the incentive for Intel or AMD or all these video game companies or Capcom or, Sony, Konami, whatever you name, video game companies or even phone development companies, the Apples, the Samsungs, HTC, Huawei, why would they want to take such a big risk and put in so much money to produce so much product in Africa? When it's such a high risk, you might end up with an entire line of product that's gone to waste, and such a big deficit, a big loss in the current economy globally, a company is not willing to take. That could actually just put you out of the game altogether. But it's not all bad. It's saying that the risk currently, as it slowly falls, like we're slowly developing, we're getting there, it's very slow. But you look at countries like Botswana, South Africa, Egypt, Tunisia, look at places like Nigeria, Tanzania, Mali, Malawi, Madagascar, Mauritius, you see that there is development. Some problems, but definite development is there. Some of these countries are rivaling some of the so-called first world countries. Look at South Africa, it's a bustling economy. So as the risk falls and telecommunications capabilities rise, Africa is becoming more viable, and especially considering the production capabilities that could come from the world's fastest growing market, there definitely is a chance. We have the fastest growing economy, we have a lot of people in Africa, a lot of able hands. Definitely the potential is there. Telecommunications companies are moving. And in the previous podcast, we're talking about how internet in Africa is kind of now slowly becoming a thing. And for example, in Zimbabwe, 98% of all of all internet connections are made via mobile. Even if the internet is still a problem, people are still getting connected, people are still communicating, people are still connecting with each other one way or another. No matter how hard it is, we're getting there. The potential is definitely there. You have countries like China, India, Russia, that all made the BRICS trade agreement. China once invested 26 billion in African investments projects in 2013, but it then soon after increased that investment cost to 60 billion in 2017 in loans, in aid, in business help and infrastructure. Surely other economies are seeing slowly but surely that, we might want to have a slice of this cake yet again, because as Africans we're doing something right. People wouldn't bother investing or coming to try startup businesses here if there was nothing there. If you look at our mineral resources, they are extremely high, very rich in natural resource. Why wouldn't people want a slice of the cake? Now the issue is, as Africans, if we want to be a part, or should we say if we want to be considered in this global economy, if we want more businesses having branches, headquarters in Africa, we have to realize that for ourselves as well, and then finally take our own cake and eat it, I guess. That's only just one part. Really, there are other things. There are London-based funds called the Blakeney Management. We've got South Africa's own Pamodzi Investment Holdings. There are so many different banks that have investments in Africa right now, currently running from old times till now. The potential is there. Why can't we see it? Why can't we utilize it? What is stopping us? You can consider countries such as South Africa, as I was saying, Zimbabwe, Angola, Congo, Mozambique, Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, Egypt, Nigeria, Morocco. Those are just a few of the ones I know. I'm sure there are more. All these countries are getting huge financial aid and investment. Projects are being run, but yet I still see no result. As a gamer, as a citizen of this country, I want to see results. I want to go into town and look for products in stores that are there. Most of the situation that's currently there right now is if you want tech, you need laptops, you need computers, you need cell phones, you need TVs, you need flat screen TVs, you need gadgets, you need different peripherals, different technology that's required in these modern times to make a business or to do something productive. You can't find it in the stores. The stores just don't exist. Even if we just look at it from a basic point of view, let's just say you want to buy a PlayStation 4. You are a gamer, maybe you're on console, you want a PlayStation 4, an Xbox One, or a Nintendo Switch. There is no Sony store in Zimbabwe. There's no Microsoft store in Zimbabwe. And there's definitely no Nintendo store in Zimbabwe. The only way you can get one is if you can try ship it from abroad, which will cost you way more money than if you could buy it straight out the store. Or have to look for people in countries in Africa where those stores exist and then ask them to ship them for you. Or you have situations whereby we now have runners in Zimbabwe who travel to all these countries to get all these different gadgets, get all these different items that people require on a day-to-day basis, even if it's outside of technology. They bring them in one way or another, illegally or not, and then they sell to the people here. They now run that business of going out the country to source this material to bring it back in for people. Why can't we have the companies here locally in all our countries? Why can't we produce? What exactly is the problem? There was one OECD observer who brought forward this statement. He said, but something new is happening, as now even the hedge funds are getting in on the action. Two-Door Investments took a risk on African Opportunities Partners, a vehicle for investing in Tanzania beer, Senegalese telecoms, and in insurance companies in Egypt. The Swiss financier Nicolas Clavel launched the first hedge fund in Europe entirely dedicated to Africa on the 1st of July 2007, the Cyprian African Opportunities Fund. ... This is someone noticing that even the rich people, the powerful people, are realizing that there is potential not being utilized in this continent. They're making moves, they're making their plays to reap extremely large profits. Because at the end of the day, when these countries do finally develop, someone has to get paid for that development. I just hope that some of that money might go to the African people, because as it stands, it's definitely going to all these rich powers at play. It's a difficult situation, but if you were to look at some of the graphs, I noticed that you could see from 2003 to 2011, when we're just looking at investments and projects being started in Africa by foreign investors and locals. I saw on one of the graphs when I was just looking at what these investors were talking about, and they were, I believe, 27 different investment projects that were started in 2003. By 2011, there were up to 457 investment projects all across Africa. And this was spanning across different avenues, but overall you'd see averages of about 400%. That's a big percentage. That's almost as big as the inflation in Zimbabwe, even though we were in the 1000% of inflation. But anyway, that's not the point. You're seeing situations whereby in small isolated examples, you're getting up to 400% increases of activity. And then in the larger scale of things, we're going from 27 to 457 investments. I'm not good at math. You can do the math and figure out what that percentage is. That's a big increase. Yet, if we look at it on the ground, I'm opening my eyes, I'm turning around, I'm trying to see where exactly are these investments? Where did it all go? As a Zimbabwean, this country keeps on getting worse and worse and worse. Where are all these investments going? I don't know. But it's been noted, like I was saying before, the reason for all of this is financial information and communications infrastructure improving. So at least if people are able to note what exactly is going on, hopefully we'll see some change. As a gamer personally, I would like to see some change. I would like to see world tour events held in African countries. I would like to see tournaments, big tournaments with big prize pools held in Africa. I would like to see more sports events held in Africa. At least we had the World Cup in South Africa. Soccer World Cup, at least that was a thing that actually happened, and you see how much business that brought. It was a booming success. Fair and fine, people hated the Vuvuzela, but we are getting there slowly but surely. I just want to see more. For gamers, I genuinely want to see more events. I want to see more shipments of things for gamers, joysticks. I want to see more consoles. I want to see more computers. I want to see more equipment that gamers can use to further their hobbies or professions. I actually want to see a situation just like you see in places like America, where gaming can be a profession, not just a hobby. I would like to see that. If you look at the numbers, I checked out one graph saying there's apparently 268 million gamers in Africa and the Middle East combined. There's 912 million in the Asia Pacific, they are the majority. We have 333 million gamers in Europe, of which 185 million are from Western Europe and 153 million are from Eastern Europe, and some are in between. And then you have a situation where you have 200 million gamers in North America, and apparently 192 million in South America. We have more gamers in Africa and the Middle East than in South America, yet South America gets and receives more marketing, more events, more sponsorship, and more coverage than Africa. Africa is close to zero, but yet we have more gamers than them. Why is that so? What exactly is the problem? We only have I'm gonna close on this before my friend King takes over for a small segment. We only have 4 Sony stores in the entire Africa. If this information I have is correct, it claims that there are 57 official Sony headquarters around the world. Of those 57, only 4 are in Africa. This is a disgrace. This is a disgrace. I'd like to sign off, and thanks for listening to April's podcast. Hopefully next month I'll come in with some more enlightenment into these problems for Africa, for gamers, and everyone else alike. I hope that the questions I posed in the beginning people can find answers to. But for now, I'll try to look for the answers myself. Thanks for listening in, and I will see you next time.
What's up, YouTube? It's your boy King, and I would like to thank my boy 4 Years Wasted for giving me the opportunity to air out my views on the issue concerning Africa being a country worth investing. So I'm gonna delve a bit on the gaming field. Like, as most of you know that might have seen the tournament videos on 4 Years Wasted channel, I usually play Tekken 7 and Street Fighter 5 and occasionally Marvel vs. Capcom, and I'm a huge member in the local FGC here. So what really ticks me off is that the FGC hasn't actually gotten as much exposure as it should have. Well, of course, it's actually big outside Africa, like the Americas, Europe, Asia and stuff. That hands down, the FGC there is big. But right here in Africa, the FGC is there, but it's not getting the exposure that it needs. Because the closest to being exposed is when you get to play a match online and you don't even be a ranked set. You just play a simple match online and then that's it. So one time when Taken announced that Taken World Tour, and I saw the trailer on YouTube, I was actually shocked. I was like, wow, the Taken World Tour is actually coming again. It's coming back. And to my surprise, they say that let's just go to the Taken website. Okay, this is what they're saying here. They're saying they're gonna be having the Taken World Tour in 5 different continents, right? So what comes to my mind is 5 different continents. We're talking about North America, South America, Europe, Asia, and Africa. Then I was like, but nah, it can't be possible, because which popular player in Africa has actually made it to the world qualifiers or even at Evo? None. So then I was like, oh, then the fifth continent is Australia. I got a little disappointed. I don't want to lie to you, but I then realized, nah, the exposure is not yet there yet. I'm pretty sure the Tekken World Tour, actually the guys over at Bandai Namco have actually done that research on the player base here in Africa, and maybe they realized, okay, there are a few ranked matches that actually happen online in Africa. And also, I think the reason why these ranked matches are not actually happening is because in Africa, right, the servers suck. I don't want to lie to you, the servers really suck. Like, if you get into a ranked match, one way or the other, you're gonna come out salty because you'll try and do your move and it won't come out. Then the person on the other side with a shitty connection will end up kicking your ass. Then you go home salty. Oh, you rage quit, break the disc, throw it in the bin, and then that's it. So yeah, that's what actually happens in Africa. Like, our servers suck. Like, you'll be playing on a 4-bar connection, but then all of a sudden it's like you're playing underwater. That's something that really ticks me off, like, big time. But I don't know, I think something has to be fixed. But what I would like, what I want mostly is that these major companies like Capcom and the Tekken World Tour and Bandai Namco, actually, they shouldn't stress themselves much about Africa. What we need right now is for Africa to build an FGC on its own. Let the African FGC grow on its own, okay? Because we shouldn't be like that type of continent, or actually type of location that requires a spoon or an extra bowl of milk and cereal, actually assistance to actually grow. We have to grow on our own. We have to learn on our own. By learning on our own, we have to learn from what the other FGC members are doing. We have to know what makes a true FGC. Okay, that way Africa can be integrated into the World Series. Because it's like this, in the Olympics, you've got a situation whereby you've got a few African countries that at least that represents the world. You know what I mean? But, well, in the gaming field, not yet, not as of yet. And I'm pretty sure if an African guy was just to go and compete at EVO, that most likely the gameplay will be good, but it'll be that type of gameplay whereby you know the combos, but you don't know the movement. You see? Footsies. Because most of the people that I've actually played with online, they know combos, but footsies, there's nothing. What we need to do is to learn and grasp these games that are being played, and yeah, we have to grasp the concept behind these games, and we see what will happen. Because I'm pretty sure Africa will only become a recognized continent in the FGC probably in 5-10 years time, because Wunzim, I don't want to lie to you, Wunzim. So, okay, I'm about to sign off. I gotta go back to work and stuff. So, yeah, 4 years wasted. That's what I gotta say. That's my take.